Hey, Matt, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Ryan.
Well, Matt, so you and I interact a lot. You do my books. We interact a lot on other businesses. You do a lot of deal due diligence. You're well known in the online space. I know you do a fair amount of offline Main Street businesses. We're so excited to have you on here with CapForge. You're one of the best bookkeepers I know. That's just what it comes down to, Matt. So we've had you on the show. You can find additional show notes there. We'll link to there at the bottom. But Matt, tell us a bit about your background. Tell us about CapForge, how you got into the space.
Yeah, definitely. The way I got into bookkeeping was I was like you years ago. I was doing business brokering, right? I'd had my own business. I had bought it. I ran it for a number of years. I decided it was time to sell. I sold it myself. And I thought, that was pretty fun. Maybe I'll buy another business. Maybe the best way to find the next business is to get into business brokering because I love talking deals. I love talking to sellers and buyers and looking at different businesses. And so that seemed like a great route. So I got into business brokering. And the number one thing that you do when you talk to a potential seller is you say, all right, let's figure out how much this business is worth, how much you could get for it. If you decide to move ahead with the sale, let's look at your books. And time again, what I would see was there was always a story. Oh, the books. Yeah. Well, they're about 6 months out of date. Sorry about it. Or, oh, I know there's some problems in there. I know they're a little wrong. Oh, my CPA does them and it's not that time of year yet. You're like, time of year? You mean you go 12 months without the books? Once a year you get books. So it was a constant struggle. And although I had a lot of fun doing the business brokering and it closed a bunch of deals, I thought, maybe the long-term opportunity for me is to get into that bookkeeping space because obviously there's an issue there. There's a need for a good solution for good, accurate, professional bookkeeping with good customer service and affordable pricing. Maybe that's the niche. Instead of trying to buy a business, maybe I move into that space. So back in 2012, which seems like forever ago,
Multiple decades ago. Yeah.
yeah, so ancient history. That's what I did. I, launched into the bookkeeping side of things, and I had an MBA and, accounting experience, but I refreshed on QuickBooks and bookkeeping and stuff. I got into it and, started to immediately pick up clients, very quickly brought on some really smart people who were full-time, really dedicated bookkeepers, which I could do it, but it wasn't my goal to be just a one-man shop. I really wanted to kind of build the business. And from there, it just kind of took off. And not too far after we started, bookkeeping, we got the first call from an e-commerce client. He was an Amazon seller. He said, hey, can you do the books for my Amazon business? I said, I don't know, but I'll take a stab at it. And we tried it out and, took a bunch of false starts. And it was definitely more complicated than, your average Main Street business, but figured it out. And he said, hey, that's awesome. By the way, I'm in a Facebook group. Do you mind? Some other people are asking, can I put your name out there? And I was like, go for it. And here we are, 1,100 e-commerce clients later. It's been a huge, huge win for us to be in that space. But the fundamental problem that I had 15, 20 years ago of business owners with lousy books, that hasn't changed. It's still a thing. There's still so much bad bookkeeping out there. I'll never be out of a job.
You helped 1,100 businesses and entrepreneurs, but there's probably 11 million more you can help, right?
Exactly.
Well, also, Matt, what I love about your story too is you've had a lot of shifts. You started in the restaurant industry, and I think that was the business you sold, right?
Right.
Yeah. You went from restaurants to selling your business, to brokering, to starting another business, and now helping other businesses. I think that's like pretty typical of your career now is you're going to do a bunch of different things and wear a bunch of different hats. And the thing you're doing now is not what you'll be doing in 5 or 10 years from now. It'll change drastically.
Definitely. I'm much more of an entrepreneur, and I like, out with talking to people or meeting people or no, what do you do? Like, well, I own an accounting business, but hold on, I'm not really an accountant. I'm really an entrepreneur.
Before I put you to sleep.
Right. Don't walk away. Don't come back.
Well, I love the other part. You're like, hey, that was fun selling my business. I'm going to be a broker. And I always tell people being a broker is fun. It's all fun and games until it all falls apart. And then it's not very fun.
Yes. So many times you're, on the cusp of it's going to close. It's going to be great. I'm going to get my commission check. There's going to be a happy buyer, happy seller. And at the 11th hour, something comes out of left field and everything falls apart. And it's just, it's like a roller coaster. The highs and lows are nuts.
every deal needs to be saved 3 times. And if it hasn't been saved 3 times before it gets to the time to sign the APA, you know something's going to happen.
Right.
It's like
It's coming.
it's not going through, right? You got to save it 3 times. Well, so this is interesting, Matt. And you had just told me that 25%. You have 1,100 e-commerce clients. You do a lot of online businesses, right? But you have a big chunk of your business that's Main Street too. So we're at the beginning of 2023. It's been a very odd 3 years with lockdowns, but also just the economy in general, where the economy was roaring. Everybody was buying everything online, and now people are buying less stuff. Most e-commerce is down 2022 over 2021. Who knows what's going to happen in 2023? You get to see a lot across businesses and many businesses and many trends. What are you seeing across your clients? What's the overall sentiment in the market? Are you seeing businesses that are stabilizing? Are they more worried going into 2023? What are you seeing just across all the different data points that you have?
It's interesting. I think a lot of our Main Street businesses are feeling better about stuff, right? They figured out inflation to some extent. They've been able to hire some more folks because there was a period of time where it's just really tough to hire. That seems to be easing a little bit. And generally, I think a lot of people are still expecting recession the first half of this year, but I think there's less of the fear of, what's going to happen. Am I still going to be in business? A lot of people, I think, are feeling better about things in the Main Street. On the other hand, everybody who's in e-commerce just had a really tough 2022. And we have seen some clients who've decided to close up shop. Some clients who've decided to completely start over on the brands they were selling. And what we've seen on that side, and what I've had this conversation 10 times in the last 2 weeks telling people, if you're in an e-commerce business where you don't have any real differentiation on the product you're selling, if you're relying on somebody to type in a generic search term like pocket knife, right? And then you're hoping to come up for pocket knife and somebody's going to pick your pocket knife over the other 4,000 choices they have, you're going to have a tough time, right? It's back to sort of business 101 where you need to have a product and a brand that's differentiated. It's the pocket knife for fishermen who fly fish in Montana, right? And you've got the pocket knife that they need because they've got a unique situation that only your pocket knife can solve. And they now don't care as much about price. They're not looking for the cheapest price. They're looking for your product that has your brand that solves the problem that they have because you've got a different solution than everyone else. If you're in that boat, right, then you've got a much better chance of being successful, carving out your niche, having profitable sales. If you're just trying to compete with all the other people, just producing low price, undifferentiated products, you're going to lose because you're up against the Chinese sellers, the manufacturers. Their advantage is they're the direct source so that they can compete on price. You can't, right? For the most part, you can't compete on price. So you've got to build a brand. That's the conversation I've been having. And a lot of people get that. They understand they're working on that or already have that. But the guys that just thought they were going to come in and, arbitrage something cheap off Alibaba and flip it for 10x that cost on Amazon and pocket the difference, those guys are having a real tough time.
That's interesting. And I think at the end of the day, you build a good business and it doesn't matter when you exit, there's going to be good buyers that are out there. I think too, anytime there's a new channel to sell something, there can be a land grab at the beginning, right? Early 2000s when people were selling online, you could kind of just sell whatever you wanted, right? There wasn't that much competition. And then Amazon became this juggernaut online. It really, in 2014, 2015, 2016, you could put anything you wanted up on Amazon and you could break number one. You could rank number one in any category, right? And then over time, you have all these sellers and now manufacturers are going direct to Amazon. And so you do need to figure out a way to compete with them, have a differentiated product. And some of the best products that I've seen do have the patents or the utility patents, or just they're unique enough where people have built the brand up in a way where the reviews actually make a difference. And so that's helpful. That's interesting too about the Main Street side where they figured out the inflation piece and they figured out the hiring, because I felt like those two were just crippling the Main Street businesses. I think inflation, everybody just raised their prices by 30 to 100%, right? They figured that out. But the hiring, I have lots of family and close friends who are, manufacturing and a lot of sweaty businesses, service-based businesses, and they couldn't hire people. they would have to turn away business, and they couldn't do that. So that's interesting that those are starting to kind of flip a little bit.
It's still, well, I mean, if you're in a bigger area, right? So we're in San Diego, I think it's the 10th or 11th biggest city in the US. There's a good population of people to pull from. It's still not easy. Don't, get me wrong. It's not easy to find people, but it's loosened up to where before there was literally nobody to hire. But listen, if you're still in a smaller town, not a big population center, and everybody that wants a job has got a job, you're in trouble. Right? There's just nobody, and you need somebody to physically come into your location to do work, right? A lot of people have realized there's a lot of jobs that didn't used to be able to be remote that now are remote. They figured out how to make it remote, and now, it's evened out sort of the population of workers and work to be done. And so you can be in a small town and work for a big accounting firm or work for a graphic design firm or whatever, even though they're not located in your town, that work has gone remote. And so that has been helpful. And that change, COVID pushed it along a lot faster than it would have otherwise gone. But yeah, I mean, if you need somebody to show up at your location and do work with their hands, that still can be a tough situation to be in.
I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, the smaller markets are actually going to get hit more based on the remote work because more people don't have to just rely on the economy that's right there in this small town. One thing I was telling you, Matt, before we jump into this call is I've run into multiple 7-figure businesses doing, mid 7 figures, anywhere from 3 to 7 million in revenue in the last little bit with just horrible books, right? They haven't been run right. They're doing the right things to try to get them around. When you go to sell a business and have bad books, it makes it tricky for a buyer to actually understand what they're going to get, which anytime you introduce fear or uncertainty into a deal, there's risk, and buyers are going to pay less if there's risk, right? My question for you, Matt, is we've got a lot of entrepreneurs listening. They have their businesses, they're about to acquire a business. How can an entrepreneur know if their bookkeeper isn't doing things correctly? And you gave an example of like, hey, it's not the right time. Well, you can't run your books once a year. You pay your taxes once a year, whatever, but you have to run your books more often. How can entrepreneurs know what could be done better or what's being done wrong with their bookkeeping?
Right. You see it all the time. I see it all the time. We have conversations in fact, literally this morning, I had a conversation with a woman, her business, $2.5 million a year. She says to me, I think it's time that we started doing bookkeeping. I think it was time 2 years ago, but it's never too late to start. I'm glad you're calling today. But yeah, if your first question is just, do you have timely numbers, right? If I say, how did you do last month? Right now we're having this conversation in January. So if I'm asking you, well, how do your December numbers look? And you're going, December? They haven't even finished August yet. Okay, that's the first sign you're not really with the right firm. The numbers are no good to you. What happened last August is so far back in history that you can't make any useful decisions by the time you finally see August numbers if it's 6 months after the fact. So the first thing, you don't have to be any kind of accountant. You just are my numbers current? Am I getting current numbers every single month that I can look at? The second thing is, do you have faith in your numbers, right? You should be able to look at your numbers and say, yeah, I'm not an accountant, but I'm looking at my numbers and say, yeah, that the sales numbers feel right. That cost of goods sold, that looks right in proportion to sales, my ad spend, or, whatever your metrics are, the things you normally look at, payroll. Or are you going, that doesn't seem like you've got $10,000 in travel here. I haven't been anywhere in 6 months. Well, what's going on? So when you look at your numbers, does it make sense? Does it flow through? Does it compute with what you feel like your business is doing? And if not, if you ask questions, hey, how'd you get this number? Or where did this come from? If the answer is, oh, I'm not sure, or I don't know, or, oh, I thought you gave me that number, or, something along those lines, then okay, again, you got no answer. 3 weeks later, you get an email saying, something about something you didn't even ask about, right? That's a good sign. You're probably not, right? You should have immediate feedback. There should be a logical explanation. And then if there's a reason to disagree, then jump on a call. Let's figure it out. I thought it was X. You thought it was Y. Let's figure out what it should be. Is it X? Is it Y? Maybe it's Z, but you should be able to have real-time data and answers to the questions you have about your numbers. And then the last thing black and white, easiest test that you can do if you're not sure if your books are in good shape or if your numbers are accurate, take a look at the balance sheet. And I know that's not a report that most entrepreneurs look at very often. But again, it's without even being an accountant, without knowing hardly anything about accounting, take a look at the balance sheet. And if you look at, let's say, it should show your bank balance on there. If you look at your bank balance and it should be about $50,000, right? And the number you see on your balance sheet says minus $125,000. Without knowing anything else,
It's off.
I'm going to tell you there's a problem. Same thing with credit card balances, loan balances, sales tax balances, anything you look at, your vehicle loan, the value of your vehicle, anything on there, you should probably have at least a rough idea of what that number should look like. And if it's nowhere close, that's probably a good indication that either they're just not keeping up on it, they're not asking the right questions, and clearly they're not double checking for accuracy and just common sense checks. So within 10 minutes, you should be able to tell if your books are any good or not without having any knowledge of accounting. And if you're not sure, you want a second opinion, I'll tell you within 10 minutes if your books are any good or not. Free of charge, no obligation. Just send it to me and I can tell you immediately, yep, these are close, or no, these are miles off.
And we'll link to CapForge.com and everything in their show notes. But Matt, you summed it up. It's like, are they current? Do you have faith in those numbers? Do those numbers make sense? If does it feel right when you look at it? And then the third piece you mentioned was look at the balance sheet, right? And like we said, is like balance. You said bank balance, credit card statements, sales tax, vehicle
inventory balance,
inventory balances. Yeah, if any of those are way off, something's going to be off, right? And what I have found, and I have done this for years of my entrepreneurial career, is you don't have up-to-date numbers. And so even you as the seller, as the owner of the business, if you're not even looking to sell, you're running the business off what the eyeball is of the bank balance of right now. And that is a horrible way to run the business. And if you're working off data from August, you can't adjust fast enough. You might be, losing a ton of cash over the last 4 or 5 months because you haven't had up-to-date numbers. You can't run your business by like whatever's in the bank account and just a fly-by-night number, right? Not even if you're going to sell, right? That's just for the nature of your business, and you can run your business so much better and profitably by knowing those numbers. And we see too many entrepreneurs are really, well, I've got 50 grand in the bank, so I can spend 50 grand on inventory. I can spend 50 grand on a car. It doesn't work like that. And I'm sure you've seen that a million times.
Absolutely. And really, once you've gone through the process of cleaning everything up and optimizing, if you're planning to sell, even if you don't sell for another year, that's really how you should run it anyway. I always tell clients, like, if you run the business as if you could sell it next month, even if you don't plan to, what that really means is you're running it as best as it can be run. You're not wasting money on ad spend. You're not wasting money on unprofitable SKUs. You're not spending money on continuing education or software subscriptions you don't use anymore. And okay, even if you don't end up selling it, still, why throw the money away, right?
Yeah.
That's money you could be putting in your pocket or investing in other forms of growth that are working or whatever else. It's like when, somebody goes to sell their house, they run around, that door always was broken. I fixed the door. I fixed the leaking window. I repainted it. Everything looks amazing. And now you're going to leave.
Wait, now you're going to move.
Do that anyway, right? And then whenever you're ready to sell, you could sell at any time, right? An amazing offer comes in. You could decide to sell. You don't have to scramble, clean up, try and fix things. And, by the way, how do you know what an amazing offer is unless you've got it really set up and optimized, right? You want to always kind of know, I think, how much your business is worth and that it's running as best it can. And then you don't have to stress. If an offer comes in, you go, this is laughably low, I'm not interested, or this is ridiculously high. I did a valuation project with a client about 2 weeks ago. He got an unsolicited offer and he asked me to take a look and see if it was any good. Well, I went through, looked at his numbers, and it turns out the offer he got was double the highest number I would have thought he could possibly get if he was on the open market. The reason he got such a good offer was it was a strategic buyer. The buyer would be able to integrate his product with their products, cross-sell, and sort of a 1+1 = 3 deal. So, yes, take this offer. You can close. You want to sell the business? This is the offer to take, because you're not going to get a number like this from anyone else ever again.
Well, and if he didn't have his book set up, he wouldn't know, or the person giving him that
Exactly.
offer wouldn't know, right?
Exactly.
And listeners would be surprised how many times we see businesses that are, seasonal or something, and people don't look at the numbers and they don't reduce their ad spend when they're in the off season. So they end up spending $20,000 that they didn't need to. And there's all these little things that you should be able to tweak by knowing your numbers. And one example, man, you're talking about somebody you met with this morning. I met with a friend this morning, and we had first met maybe 18 months ago. And incredible entrepreneur, builds great brands, beautiful brands, and just a really fun guy to be around. And he's on his 5th business. Some were great, some weren't. He's exited 3 of them already. He came to me 18 months ago, had a great business, doing a few million in revenue. The books weren't very good. I said, hey, you should use CapForge. So he was able to get the exit that he was looking for. Well, fast forward now, he's got this business that's absolutely crushing it. And my first question to him, Matt, was, hey, what are you doing for your bookkeeping? Because I know that was an issue last time. He says, oh, no, I'm good. I've got CapForge now. And so his books are perfect. So that's an advertisement for you and CapForge, Matt, that somebody on their 5th business, you learn a lot on your first business. And then the second business, you take all those mistakes, get rid of them. Now you know which apps to use on your Shopify store. You know which bookkeeper to use. And then you exit that business or it burns into the ground, and then you take that and go to your 3rd business. And now this entrepreneur on his 5th business is building an incredible business, but it took him several renditions to be able to get there. And the first thing he did was make sure that his books were in order.
Absolutely. I mean, you can come to, like the woman this morning, right? She's already at 2.5 million. Now she wants to get the books done. You can do it that way, but we have to go back historically, recreate, there's a lot of extra time and effort and lost data that you could have been taking advantage of all along. So I think you're absolutely right. Once people have been through it a few times, they pick up on what's important. And one of those things is having good numbers, not just, using us. Great. I appreciate the business, but whether you use us or not, use somebody. Make sure that you're using that data to really drive the business forward. Get good month-over-month comparisons, set yourself goals, set KPIs, and really keep your eye on it. Because, like you said, right, if you're just driving the bus by looking at your bank balance and that's it, and that's the only thing you're very much less likely to be optimized and successful. I mean, you can still do okay, but you're going to do so much better if you're really measuring and setting goals and keeping track. And then you're always going to know exactly where you are, and you can make smart decisions based on good numbers. And then, the other thing we can do with good numbers is exactly what you go through with sellers is, go through and find all the things that can potentially be added back, set them aside, and really build up the business value. But that's much harder if you're not organized and you don't have things in the right place, and you're literally leaving money on the table. If you have $100,000 of ad backs we don't find or can't identify, or you've commingled and made such a mess of things that we can't put it on, in as part of the valuation, you didn't just lose $100,000. If the business was going to sell for 3x, you've lost $300,000. Or the business could have sold for 4x if it wasn't such a dumpster fire, but it only sells for 3x because it's such a mess. So
You're taking the hit on the multiple and the SDE number.
yeah, I mean, you're just doubling down on your losses, leaving money on the table for what could have been, a $3,000 or $4,000 accounting cleanup project to, fix all that for you. And had you done it ahead of time, you could have been running that much smarter all along and pocketing that extra money. So it's just I feel like sometimes we're beating a dead horse. I'm sure you do too, and trying to get this message out. But really, we only say it because you as the business owner, you as the business seller benefit so much more by having this done, 100x more than it costs to do it. But yet we still run into people who don't do it or don't want to,
Well, yeah, and you'll even have seasoned entrepreneurs who don't do it. And the entrepreneur I was talking about earlier today, when I went to ask him, hey, what is your cost to acquire a customer? What's your CAC? He knew it right off the bat. Hey, what are your landed costs? He knew it down to the penny. he knew these things because he had made these mistakes before. Well, just save yourself the headache of 4 startups before that. So, on day one from this business that you can do that. We've talked a lot about, hey, you got to get your numbers, you got your numbers set up. A common, and we sort of touched on this. I want to dive a little further though. We've heard of people doing books on monthly, quarterly, even annual, right? They're annual. Granted, the numbers aren't going to change that much if you do it on an annual basis because you're just paying your taxes, but you don't have any ability to run your business during the middle of it. Now, if you look at a lot of Main Street businesses, a lot of times you'll get the summaries from a business, or you get the prospectus or the SIM or whatever you want to call it, and they just give you some annual numbers. So for the sellers out there who are looking to sell their business, why do buyers need to see the business on a monthly P&L?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's critical. And when we do due diligence projects, so we work, not only a lot with sellers, helping them prep for sale, but we do a lot of work with buyers who are looking at, verifying the information for the business they're acquiring. And every single time I want to see, in those cases, I want to see the numbers on a monthly basis, because there's all kinds of things that could have happened between January and December to get to that total. In fact, I can give you a good example. We had a plumbing company that we were doing due diligence for. And we looked at their year-over-year numbers. And in 2021, they had about 1.2 million in sales. 2022, they had about 1.6 million in sales. But there was a 4-month period in 2022 where they had, I won't get into it, but a variety of problems, right? And they did about 1/3 of the revenue in those 4 months that they could have done. So, missing that information would have really hurt them as the seller. If they, we hadn't been able to see that and talk to the buyer and say, look, this, the numbers look good, but they would have been even better. And this is why this was a temporary thing. And, we could speak to that. But if all you see is the end of the year, you're missing a whole amount of information. Or, maybe you sell Christmas trees or something, right? And you're looking at you're going to get an SBA loan that's going to have 12 monthly payments of the same amount, but you've only got revenue for basically a month and a half. And then you've got 10.5 months of no revenue. That's super critical information to know. So, as a buyer of a business, you absolutely want to see what the monthly performance looks like, not just the end of the year numbers, but as a seller too, you want to understand highs and lows. Are you setting aside enough for working capital? Do you have a cushion for if things, go low, or to invest in growth or whatever? Just getting those very intermittent snapshots of data can be very misleading on the high end or the low end, depending on, what the business is actually doing in all those times where you're not seeing anything.
And I've seen it too, Matt, where you've got seasonal businesses like your Christmas tree example, and the buyer goes to get financing. Well, the bank's going to ask, hey, well, what do you do in April for revenue? Like, you actually can't get financing for businesses like this. And
Nope.
As a buyer, and at the end of the day, any financing that's available for a buyer is actually financing for the seller, because that just means they have more options to sell their business to more potential buyers, which more buyers at the table obviously helps everybody, helps the seller out. Before, I know we only got a couple minutes left here, Matt. We'll link to you. We'll talk a little bit about CapForge and give us the rundown of what you all offer, including the due diligence services. But you've interacted with thousands of businesses, online, offline. What's the most unique way, with not disclosing any NDAs or anything out there, that you've seen someone make money and have a business?
I mean, it's not unique, I guess, but we just had a client we did a big due diligence project for that does septic tanks out in New Mexico. I mean, it's a way to make a living, and certainly, we need it and appreciate it. I'm sure if you're out there using a septic tank, but that's not, that wouldn't be what I would want to get into. But I mean, I always tell people who are looking at buying a business, like, you can be successful with anything, right? You could be successful opening a typewriter repair business. If, you love typewriters, you can find the antiques, you can, polish them up, get them fixed, and sell them on Antiques Roadshow for $500,000, right? You can make it work. You can make anything work. The grass really isn't greener. Maybe in the septic tank business, there's some greener grass there, but any business can be successful with the right person behind it, the right skill set, the right motivation and drive. But don't be looking for a unicorn business or something that's going to magically make easy money. There's no easy money. It all requires work. It all requires effort and an investment of time and energy and passion to put into it. And if you do that, if you understand who the competition is and how you beat the competition, you can be successful with any kind of business. If you're willing to put the work in. On the other hand, the easy money stuff, it's all, there's a million courses you can buy on how to make easy money, but the only people making money on those courses are the course sellers.
I was just going to say that. So that's a fun example. And I was just talking to a friend was messaging, hadn't talked to in years. And he said, I want to buy an online business. And I was like, great. What are you looking for? And he's like, I want something passive. I don't have that much time. And I said, all I said was buying a business is the least passive form of investment you can do. So, and I said, if somebody is telling you otherwise, they are selling you a course. That's literally what I told them. So,
yes.
Matt, where can people find you and learn more about what you offer there at CapForge?
Yeah, I mean, the best place to find us is just on the website, capforge.com. It's got information on all our services. It's got pricing. It's got our contact information. Take a look. If it's something we can help you with, we're happy to, have a conversation. We always start out with, as a free consult. Like I said earlier, if you want a review of your books just to find out if it's time to fire your bookkeeper and find someone else, happy to do that. If you're interested in due diligence, if you're buying a business, or if you're a seller, you want to make sure you get the premium price for your business, any of those kinds of things, reach out. Happy to have a conversation. If we can help you, great. If not, we might know someone else who can refer you, whatever. But yeah, capforge.com is a great place to start.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Matt. Like I said before, we'll link to that there in the show notes. Appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.